By the end of today's episode, you'll know an advanced strategy on how to get way more auditions and bookings, okay? It's all about testing, and I'll show you how to get industry feedback fast and figure out what works best for your acting career so that you don't waste time or money. Welcome to the Actor's Career Compass, where we help aspiring screen actors find high-quality auditions, sign with great agents, and book major roles in legit productions. I'm your host, Martin Benson, and today I'll be covering 3 simple ways to use testing to book more auditions. You're going to learn how to rebrand for maximum impact before you test new materials, how to submit more, get faster results, and use even student and unpaid projects as your audition lab, and why you should only update key submission elements, not waste your time testing stuff that doesn't actually matter. First off, you need a good profile and your acting needs to be strong. None of this testing stuff that we're going to talk about matters if anything about your clips or your acting is off, or your headshots aren't professional, etc. So I recommend first making sure of all of that. I have plenty of other episodes on how to put together strong acting profiles, but I don't want you to waste your money and time running specific tests and kind of rebranding and changing things if we don't already know whether what you already have is going to work for you if it's presented properly. Now, if after doing that, after your profiles are strong and you know your acting and everything is on point, if your numbers aren't really strong yet, then I recommend starting to test things. You can benefit from testing if your numbers are less than 20%, meaning for every 5 submissions you do, you should ideally get at least 1 audition or self-tape request. And for every 5 of those auditions or self-tapes that you submit, you should book or at least get a callback for 1. If you have numbers lower than that, it's not necessarily bad, but it does mean that you might be able to improve your numbers by implementing this testing protocol that I'm going to share. Okay, so number 1, you want to test big things like brand and character types, since they are more likely to make a noticeable difference, right? So you figure out your main type or the look that you want casting to see. How do you do this? Well, I recommend go back and look at the most recent 50 auditions that you submitted your profile to and see, are there any particular character types that come up really frequently? Like, are you submitting for lots of doctor or nurse roles or detectives or best friends? If so, create some new marketing materials to highlight that type, like shoot some new headshots. Maybe record 1 or 2 clips, whether they're self-tape or professional scenes that you pay for. And even highlight those types in your bio and your submissions notes, like, hey, I absolutely love playing detective roles, right? You can also consider testing what's called an aesthetic or personality for your profile, right? So based on your face and general look, would people see you playing more intense characters or more cheerful, bubbly ones, right? Try redoing your marketing materials with that in mind so that people get an emotional feeling when they look at your profile and submissions, okay? So when you go and you change the feeling, like the general character type and the aesthetic on your profile, now that's a test, right? So you're trying something else. You should already have your numbers previously. Now you're doing this new test and you want to test out this change for at least 1 month. Ideally 2 is better. You want to write down how many submissions you did. So how many times did you send in your materials? How many of those did you actually hear back from where they said, hey, we like your submission. Here's some sides. Please record this self-tape. And then how many bookings? So how many projects did you actually land or at least get a callback for? What you're looking for is to see if the percentages of each increased, decreased, or stayed the same, right? So again, if you're, let's say you submit for 100 projects over the course of 2 months, okay? So that's 50 a month. Now, if originally you only got 10 auditions and you only got one that you booked, well, that's a 10% rate for each. Now, if you decide, hey, I'm going to focus more on intense, darker characters, and I'm going to look up on Google some ideas and kind of get an aesthetic, and I'm going to do like, because before I was just like classic white guy or something, right? Now I'm going to rebrand and I'm going to do shots maybe where I'm like more so like wearing a leather jacket and dark color and focus more on intense expressions with a darker background. And I'm going to shoot a clip or something or two monologues that are more intense type of characters and talk about how I play and love intense characters in my bio and stuff, right? You do all of that. You update your profile. Now you take a month or two and you're submitting and you submit for 100 auditions. If you wind up getting 20 where you hear back and they actually turn into self-tape requests, and then let's say out of those you book 3 of them, right? Well, clearly that's an increase, right? Your 20 out of 100 is a 20% versus the 10% before, and your booking rate went from 1 out of 10, right, which was only 10%, to now 3 out of 20, which is 15%. So again, 3 out of 20, that's an increase, which means that this was a successful test, okay? If you can reach ideally 20% for each, so that would mean you would want like 4 out of 20 that are booked for 20%, but you're still increased. Regardless, if the numbers increase, it shows that you're in a good place and, the test result was a success. Let's say that your number is, again, 20 that turned into auditions out of 100. So you know that your submission stuff is good, but maybe something needs to improve in your auditioning since you only booked 3 out of 20 and you want that number to get to 20%. So now you can go back and test just changing your audition prep maybe, or test, like maybe send some of your auditions to a coach and get feedback on it and be like, if there were 2 things that you think that I should change when I'm submitting, what might those be, right? To make my audition stronger. And then maybe they'll give you some ideas. Now you can test and see whether those ideas actually work. And again, if you can get up to 20%, then you're in a really good place and you don't need to test or tweak things anymore. So now that we talked about kind of like how to test things, what I recommend is that you submit more to get faster feedback, right? Sometimes I hear from actors like, oh, I'm based in some random place that's not the center of LA or New York or something, and there's not many auditions around me. Well, you can still find plenty of projects to submit to, right? The more that you submit, the quicker that you're going to learn what's working. So I recommend that you don't just stick to paid or high profile roles. You can also submit to student films or unpaid gigs, basically anything that you're remotely right for. Okay, so you can find auditions by creating profiles on Backstage, on Actors Access, on casting networks, even using Instagram. If you're in another country, there's other profiles, right? Like eTalenta, or there's Spotlight. There's plenty of different places that you can go. Even like Facebook has open casting calls. The whole idea is find as many casting calls, make sure that they're for the kinds of projects that you do want to perform in, right? This test won't necessarily work if you're submitting for commercials, but you want to do film, right? So just make sure to submit, even if it's a student film or a really high budget film, it doesn't matter. As long as it's a film type of project, you're going to still get the industry feedback. The goal isn't to book these jobs, but to see what gets a response from casting, okay? Again, you might be like, oh, I don't know if I want to submit to unpaid roles, but you can always turn down the roles that you don't want. But the info that you get from more submissions and more auditions is super important, right? It's going to help you get more data to ensure that your numbers in your testing are correct, or at least like tracking. And I recommend aiming for a minimum of 50 submissions, which leads to 10 auditions, and 10 auditions, which leads to 2 bookings. Again, that's 20%. If your numbers are less than that, you can benefit by trying things and tweaking and testing. If every test seems to just like drop your numbers lower, well, maybe you're not testing the right things, or maybe you can just stick to what you had before. But the idea is if you're below 20%, especially significantly, like 10% or less, you can definitely try testing to slowly increase those numbers over time. The whole point is that the more projects that you submit to, even if they're, again, unpaid or small projects, the faster that you're going to get results and know what is or isn't working. And like I said, you can always turn down the role if you know that you don't want to do it. It's not a problem. You can just say, hey, I'm so sorry, my schedule changed. I'm not going to be able to make it. It's not a really big deal unless it's for like an amazing role, like, something, if you book some big thing on Law and Order. But in that case, you probably do want to take the role, so you wouldn't turn it down, right? Another tip is to only test what matters. So focus on things that actually impact the casting decisions, right? Headshots and the outfits and makeup that you're wearing in them. The characters and outfits and your demeanor in the clips that you use, including like self-tape style monologues that you record. You can even test the submissions notes that you're using, like the few sentences you write, like, hey, I would love to be a part of this project. I'm submitting myself for the role of X, right? Don't waste your time, though, testing like the order of the photos in your profile or changing something in the third sentence of your bio that no one's going to likely notice. It's better to test bigger things like the aesthetic or the overall brand and, just kind of like the character type that you focus on. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, I would like to invite you to leave a comment below. What is something that you would love to test about your profile? What do you think you could try changing to see if you get better or worse results? I plan to read all of the comments that come in, and I'm going to respond to as many as I can. At the end of the day, don't just arbitrarily try to improve things on your profile. You need to track your numbers to know if the improvement is actually working or if it's not working. So track your submissions, your auditions, and your bookings every month and see how the changes you make impact those numbers. Until you reach close to 20%, make sure to submit to a lot more roles, even low or no paid gigs, to get that data as fast as you can. Remember that you can always turn down a role if you feel it's not worth it, okay? Test only the things that really matter to casting and that people will notice, so the bigger things, test those, okay? So pause the video, leave your comment below, and I look forward to reading what you write. Thanks for listening. Now, if you want to dive deeper on improving your profiles, I actually recommend checking out a different episode that I did called Is Your Acting Profile Scaring Off Casting Directors and Agents? That's episode number 152. I dive deep on what to include if you want a well-performing acting profile. This is a requirement before you start testing different things. You need a profile that's got high quality and professional stuff on it and good acting. If you don't have those, like I said at the beginning of this, don't start testing different stuff because you won't know whether what you already have could be successful, okay? So check it out. Again, it's episode number 152, Is Your Acting Profile Scaring Off Casting Directors and Agents? It's on the Actor's Career Compass. Now, if you found this podcast helpful, I would really appreciate if you could take a minute to just leave a review. It does help more actors find the podcast. Just go to ratethispodcast.com/actorsuccess. And if you're interested in working with me one-on-one, you can learn more about how that works on my website, martinbenson.com. I'd love to speak with you. We'll see if you'd be a good fit for my coaching program. Thanks so much, and I'll see you soon.